What does verse 14 mean when God says, I will be his father and he will be my son? Now we need to think about that just a wee bit. For us, sonship has to do with DNA. So endless programs, the various CSIs on television, are constantly using DNA to discover who the real father is. And bound up with this are paternity suits. It's all a matter of genetic descent. But the ancient world saw things a bit differently, in part because there was a descent not only of familial connection, but of work and identity. You men now, just you men for a moment, how many of you are doing vocationally what your fathers did? Let me see your hands. Look around, folks. I see only 2 or 3. Oh, 3 hands. You women, how many of you are doing vocationally what your mothers did? Look around, folks. But you see, in the ancient world, if your father was a baker, you became a baker. If your father was a farmer, you became a farmer. If your father's name was Stradivarius, then you made violins. In other words, in an agricultural trade craft, pre-industrial society, then the son ended up doing, in the overwhelming majority of cases, what the father did. And the daughter ended up doing what the mother did. Our notions of freedom, such that we go away from home to university or to technical college and get a job somewhere else and pursue some other course, that's so common for us today. It was unthinkable a bare 300 or 400 years ago. So as a result, you became identified not only by the family name, but by the family's profession. That's why Jesus can be called the son of the carpenter, because his putative father, Joseph, was a carpenter. And in one place, he can be called himself the carpenter. Apparently, Joseph has died. And Jesus himself has taken over the family business. Joseph was a carpenter. What do you expect Jesus to be? He's a carpenter. And this meant that the father then, in the case of the son, taught the boy as well. In later Judaism, there were synagogues where kids learned reading and writing and things like that. There were little village schools of some sort or another. But your trade, what you learned, how you learned to make a living. If you're a farmer, when to plant the seed and when to irrigate and how to read the weather and how to build a decent fence and all of that, that was all taught by the family. And because of this family identification of the son with the father and the task and the clan, the notion of sonship has a whole lot of different rings than it does on CSI. Out of this come a whole lot of biblical metaphors. For example, here and there in the Bible, someone is called a son of Belial, which means a son of worthlessness. This is not saying that the father is Mr. Worthless. What it is saying is that this person's character is so worthless that he must belong to the worthless family. It's the only thing that explains it. In the time of Jesus, Jesus gives us some Beatitudes where he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Now, the idea is that God is himself the supreme peacemaker. So if you make peace, then in that respect, at least, you're acting like God. So in that respect, you're a son of God. It's not telling you how you become a Christian. It's saying that in that respect, that's what God does. So you're acting like God. Do you see? Elsewhere, when Jesus is debating with some Jewish opponents in John chapter 8, he's claiming to be sent from God. They're saying, how can this be? We are ourselves the true sons of Abraham. We are the true heritage here. And Jesus says, can't be. Abraham rejoiced to see my day. And they reply, Abraham's been dead for 2,000 years. You're not yet 50 years old. What do you mean he rejoiced to see your day? Jesus won't back down. They up the ante and say, we're not only sons of Abraham, we're sons of God. And Jesus says, can't be. I come from God. God knows me, I know God. If you don't recognize me, then you can't be sons of God. You don't recognize me at all. Let me tell you who your real daddy is. And he turns to them and he says, you are of your father the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning and you're trying to murder me. He was a liar from the beginning and you're not telling the truth. Now, Jesus is not denying that they really are sons of Abraham genetically. They are. He's not denying that they carry the Israelite heritage of genes. Nor is he suggesting for a moment that somehow the devils copulated with women to produce some sort of bastard crew. That's not what he's suggesting either. He's saying that at the level of behavior, they're acting like the devil. That makes them sons of the devil. Now that's the sort of language that is going on here. It's sonship language that is used especially with respect to kings. If God is the supreme king, if he's the king over this people, then when the human person takes on the throne, when this Davidic heir becomes king himself, then he becomes God's son. It doesn't mean he's born again or anything of that sort. It simply means that he is now acting as God's son, in God's place, in the king family, as it were. That's the nature of the promise that is given here. We read, he is the one who will build a house for me, this heir of yours, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, he will be my son.